the show is really missing? It's missing a theme song, like a This Week in Cleantech, This Week in Cleantech. You want to sing it, Mike? This Week in Cleantech? We'll do it like a barbershop quartet or something?
I would sing, except I sound like a third-grade trombone when I sing. It's not, no one wants to hear me sing. It's not.
We're starting the show like Pardon the Interruption now, by the way. Like we're Tony Kornheiser up in here. Welcome to This Week in Cleantech. I'm Paul Gerke. That's Mike Casey. This is a roundup of the week's biggest stories that you need to know about in climate and clean technology in 15 minutes or so. Today is Friday, November 15th, 2024. As mentioned, I am Paul Gerke, the Renewable Energy World Content Director. We're going to be joined by Katie Brigham from Heatmap in just a little bit. And, of course, the guy on the other side of the screen, Cleantech commentator and Tiger Com extraordinaire, Mike Casey. Mike, it's been a minute since I've been on the show. You know how much I missed you. I bought a headset in the interim. Do you like it?
I do. You look great in that thing, man. I'm telling you.
That or the Kirkland shirt. I got a new Costco shirt on today, making its debut.
Well, we have got some nice words of praise this week from Eric Haskell, who said, quote, "I'm a regular listener and enjoy it immensely. Also, you should just know, not to air dirty laundry on the show, Paul, but I've been getting angry texts from John Engel. He apparently installed cameras in his Star trailer, and he's pissed at you putting your feet up on his makeup stand while you were drinking from his wine collection. You guys are going to have to work that out, but I trust you only had one glass before we taped today."
That's the company policy, Mike. You got to be responsible. We want to thank you listeners who are actually paying attention to the show, and especially those that go on a limb to tell us how much you enjoy listening and how much you're taking out of these episodes. And just remember that if you want to be a part of the show, you can be a part of any one of these inside jokes at any time. All you got to do is nominate a story that caught your eye this week. Send it to rew@clarionevents.com. We'll have a link in the episode description when this gets posted as well. Let's get into some of the stories, Mike. I really enjoyed reading these. I don't know if you ever read them. It sounds like you're yeah, no, I know. I'm just kidding. You're a well-read guy. What's the first one we're getting into?
Adele Peters, Fast Company. What Trump means for Tesla, otherwise known as a can of worms. Paul, you get to open this one first.
Right, yeah, I don't even know where to start. So I've got a lot of strong opinions about this, but like let's stick to the story at hand. I thought this was super interesting because I hadn't really considered the points that the author made before. That, you know, Trump's pledge to roll back some of the tax credits, especially around support for EVs. It doesn't really do as much damage to Tesla as it does everyone else because they were the first movers in this market. So Tesla does benefit from that tax credit. I think it's like $7,500, but other companies rely on it so much more to be profitable. I think that the point that Elon Musk could more or less be the last EV maker standing by nature of his closeness to the Trump administration is kind of scary to me, Mike. What do you think?
Elon Musk. So many things to say, so little time. So, what Elon Musk is going to find out is that Trump doesn't really have long-term friends who see themselves as his equal. I predict he'll also learn that Tesla isn't completely cleared of the potential threats from a Trump win. Take China. That market accounts for 1/3 of Tesla sales. So if China retaliates against Trump's promised tariffs, it could make Teslas more expensive, cutting their profits in the world's largest vehicle market. But Musk could, I repeat, could have a role in tariff conversations at the White House, just like he got to play Secretary of State on Trump's call to Volodymyr Zelensky during your Bring Your Muppet to Work day. Who knows if Musk thinks he's playing a long-term game in Tesla's interest, or if he'll persuade Trump to leave the entire EV industry alone. On one hand, Musk has argued against Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, but Trump is going to do it anyway. On the other, Trump did say in August he is for electric vehicles, and that has to be because of Musk's strong endorsement. Story number 2, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to say it does seem like he was given some busy work with the Department of Government Efficiency, which I think is worth noting has 2 people, not the most efficient department we've ever had. Look, there's just one guy in this room doing this show. Anyway, story number 2. Our second story is Zach Coleman at Politico. It's titled "Exxon's Chief Has a Warning for Republicans." Mike, this one was an important one this week. What did you take out of it?
Yeah, Exxon CEO Darren Woods has repeatedly blamed the climate crisis on the consumer, arguing that big oil is just not responsible. But Woods doesn't deny that a climate crisis is a real problem. If we're looking for lights on a darkened night, at least that's one candle lit in a single window. After the election, Mr. Woods urged Trump to avoid major climate policy changes. He argued that the need to address global pollution won't ever go away, that Trump's climate policy changes could just slow us down in the long term. Specifically, Woods has opposed carbon border tariffs, which would impose fees on imports produced with more pollution than the U.S. He argues this would introduce a whole new level of complexity. He wants to see a regulatory system based on the carbon footprint of the products instead. It remains to be seen if this position is more substantive than a test tube flask full of Exxon Mobil's mythical algae fuel. Paul, what did you think of this piece?
Who writes this poetry for you? You write this stuff and then you recite it back. You're like a Hemingway over here,
brother. Just call me Shakespeare, man.
Exxon Mobil's mythical algae fuel. I think it's important, Mike, to just start with the fact that the U.S. has the world's largest economy and we're the second biggest polluter. And a lot of the major companies that have established really ambitious climate goals are sort of backpedaling on all of them. The Googles, the Amazons, all the folks related to data center stuff especially are now burning more fossil fuels and doing more harm to the environment than they were, say, 3 or 4 years ago. We're going in the wrong direction. And although Woods is not always on the side of climate solutions, I think he makes a good point here. Changes in climate policy, we should all be moving toward a common goal of reducing carbon pollution. But I think we're in a really politicized environment right now, and we're operating in a pendulum where one policymaker moves in and shifts back regulations or repeals legislation that sets back the industry 10 years. And then the next guy comes in and repeals them all with an executive order. They didn't call it the solar coaster when I joined this company for no reason, Mike, and I think we're seeing a little bit of the ride right now. What's our third story?
This week in Cleantech, former guest Bloomberg's Jennifer DeLuey has one out called U.S. Unveils Plans to Triple Nuclear Power by 2050 as Demand Soars. Yeah,
nukes are all the rage right now. It seems like every single day we're talking about a new story. Big tech needs power it can rely on when the sun isn't shining and when the wind isn't blowing. And nuclear is the carbon-free source. And I feel like anybody who has considered our long-term energy goals with any degree of seriousness understands that nuclear pretty much has to be a part of the equation. And the Biden administration, to their part, is on board. On Tuesday, they sent out a plan. I think it's 200 gigawatts of additional nuclear energy capacity, goal by around 2050, constructing some new reactors, restarting some old plants, upgrading some existing facilities. The White House wants about 35 gigawatts of that new capacity in operation in just about a decade. This is one plan that could actually live through the Trump administration. He has, as opposed to some other renewable technologies, voiced some support for nuclear previously. And I think there's some bipartisan support, especially when you consider the dollars and cents involved here, Mike. What say you?
I think that you're admitting you're a nuclear bro. That's what I think.
Not at all. I just think it's an important part of the equation. I don't think we should be afraid of it.
That's what the nuclear bros all say.
No, that's a nuclear bro attitude. All right, well,
you are totally a nuclear bro. I've been wondering what angle, but all right, well, all right. Now that we're actually getting somewhere productive on this episode. All right, nuclear. It is round-the-clock carbon-free energy. Yes, that's true. It also produces radioactive waste, which is a threat to human health, and we've never figured out what to do with that. And even though that waste accounts for 5% of the total hazardous materials shipped to the U.S. each year, wind, solar, and batteries are much cleaner options, and they don't take decades to build. But given the urgency of the pollution crisis, waiting for the perfect solution isn't an option. As AI explodes the load, we're probably going to have every electron from every imaginable source possible. Paul, our fourth story.
Yeah, we got to get moving because you and I could talk for forever. Fourth story, William James, Kate Abnett, and Simon Jessup from Reuters. It's called COP29, host Azerbaijan. You wanted me to say Azerbaijan. Hits out at the West in defense of oil and gas. Mike, what were your takeaways?
All right. The president of Azerbaijan, the host of this year's COP29, argued that nations, quote, should not be blamed for having fossil fuel reserves. We should note this is an argument that no one is actually making. Were President Ilham Aliyev on the NFL, he'd enter the Hall of Fame for such a devastating open field tackle of a straw man. Wow. He also said the U.S., the world's largest carbon polluter, and the EU have double standards, urging other nations to phase off fossil fuels when they rely on fossil fuel themselves, except we're overlooking the fact that we're actively looking to develop alternatives. So here's the problem. President Aliyev is kind of missing the point. He's the one who wanted to host a global negotiation about how we cut our global pollution footprint. So if he doesn't like barbecue, why did he push to host the cookout in the first place? Paul, what do you think?
I mean, I think that this highlights the big problem that we see with energy equity on a smaller scale in the United States, but this is global. It's the divide between the haves and the have-nots. The rich people are doing the most harm to the environment, and those feeling the impacts first are the developing countries and those closest to the equator.
You're welcome anytime.
Development lenders like World Bank have been the biggest source of climate finance for developing countries, but they're under pressure right now to provide more money, Mike. And for the rest of COP29, governments are going to be discussing how they can increase finance low and middle income countries. I think the figure that they sent was like $120 billion. That's a 60% increase on the amount it provided in 2023. Finally, a reasonable voice on the show. Mike, why don't you give us an introduction?
That would be Katie Brigham, a veteran of This Week in Cleantech from Heatmap. She has a piece, Climate Tech Companies Plan for Survival Under Trump. Katie, welcome back. If people have not read this piece, as we want them to do, what is the big takeaway?
Yeah, the big takeaway is, I mean, I think in climate world, we're all kind of curious about what's going to happen next. We only have answers to so many things, but I started with talking to some companies, Crux, Watershed, and Quilt, that all seem like they really benefit from the IRA or other Biden-era climate policies. And I chatted with them all about, the big question was just what happens next? And, we could talk about it forever, but essentially Crux, plays in that they're creating a marketplace for the transferable tax credits that the IRA unleashed. They're really banking on, the bipartisan support for these tax credits that I think a lot of folks are, hoping will stand. And even if they told me that even if the priorities of the Trump administration are vastly different, which they obviously will be, there can still be tax credits for nuclear. There can still be tax credits for advanced manufacturing. So they're really relying on there being, some level of bipartisan support and not just a complete repeal of the IRA, which I don't think anyone thinks is really going to happen these days. With Watershed, they're a platform for large corporations to track and report their emissions. And, under Biden, the SEC has developed rules for large companies to have to track and report emissions. That's currently held up in court. So it never really came into effect. So Watershed essentially said, this change in administration, well, not good. We still have the European markets that have strict reporting requirements. We have, any large business that does business in California, they have to track and report their emissions. So, they're also saying, this isn't the death knell for us. We have these other even if the U.S. never enacts these SEC reporting requirements, there's still these other markets we can rely on. And lastly, Quilt is a electric heat pump maker. Obviously, there are large tax credits for energy efficiency for heat pumps in the IRA. But they told me that, even if this goes away, obviously that would not be, even if those efficiency tax credits, even if they're eliminated, Quilt is not yet freaking out. They said there are lots of state and local incentives. And I think this is a big takeaway from a lot of people I've talked to is that states, California, New York, those that have traditionally led on climate and local administrations, this is really their time to step up since we can't depend on, there being these kinds of incentives at the federal level. So none of these companies are freaking out yet. Obviously, this is not good news for any of them. But it was interesting to hear, start to learn about how companies are thinking about this change in administration and what it might mean for them.
Katie, I heard one analyst describe the potential rollback of the IRA as maybe more like a scalpel than like a chainsaw. In your conversations with those companies, is that your takeaway as well?
Yes. I mean, obviously no company is going to say, yeah, we're completely screwed. Like they're going to eliminate the IRA and we're going to die. But I think from all the analysts I've talked to, all the companies I've talked to, all the venture capitalists I've talked to, no one is expecting a wholesale repeal. And that scalpel metaphor is one that I've heard a lot. I think it's just a matter of what's most or least likely to kind of be on the chopping block at this point.
All right, Paul, we are about out of time. We need to go to our Cleantecher of the week. This is a super cool one, I got to say.
Sorry, I was still thinking about Donald Trump wielding a scalpel and not particularly encouraged by the metaphor. But yeah, Cleantecher of the week. Sara Samanieg, Latin America's first recycling influencer. She's taught people how to sort recyclables and brought attention to Bogotá's often overlooked community of recyclers. So congrats, Sara, getting a shout out on the show. Anytime Mike Casey is smiling while we say your name, I know that's a big win for people. They want to hang it in their offices like a diploma or something.
That's good stuff. I want to give a shout out to our terrific producer, Brian Mendez, and to Alex Peterson and Claire Queer for helping us identify this week's top stories.
And Katie Brigham for putting up with us and joining us once again on This Week in Clean Tech. Thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe, give us some feedback, share your story suggestions, read the articles we discussed this week. Do whatever you want. I'm not your boss. We'll see you next time.
I'll talk to you later, Paul. Thank you, Katie. Take care.
Bye, guys.